Life has moments that seem ordinary, but carry profound lessons, enough to change a person. One sunny afternoon on a deserted street, a powerful, wealthy man suddenly found himself facing a situation that he had never thought of in his life. Among his huge assets and valuable relationships, there was one thing he had never truly possessed: sincerity and unconditional kindness. And then, a chance encounter lit a strange fire in his heart, causing the values he had pursued all his life to suddenly become small. This story is not just about a strange man or boy, but about each of us. People who are sometimes so busy chasing success that they forget that the true meaning of life can lie in the simplest things. A sincere look, a small action, or even a moment of silence in a busy life, all can make us look back at ourselves in a completely different way. Imagine you were in that situation. What would you do when faced with something that no amount of money or status can solve? When you suddenly realize that the only thing missing in your life is something that cannot be bought. Before we continue this emotional story, I have a question for you. Where did you find this story? Who shared it with you? Share your feelings in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow, a special story will be sent to you. A story that can change the way you look at life forever. Benjamin Carter, a successful businessman in his 70s, sat quietly in his shiny black Cadillac Escalade, feeling frustrated. He was used to comfort and power, but today he found himself helpless on a deserted road in the Texas suburbs, far from the familiar luxury of his magnificent mansion in Dallas. The flat tire was an ironic reminder that no matter how wealthy, people still have to face the uncertainties of life. The hot summer sun was beating down on the asphalt, and his phone was completely useless without a single signal. After several desperate attempts to call for help, Benjamin sighed and leaned his head back on the seat, accepting the fact that this time he could not control everything as he wanted. Suddenly, from afar, a small figure appeared on the dusty road. A boy of about 13 or 14 years old, thin but strong, approached. The old plaid shirt and worn-out shoes suggested that his life had not been easy, but his eyes radiated an unusual confidence. He stopped in front of Benjamin, studied the car, then looked up and asked in a calm but certain voice, "You have a flat tire?" Benjamin hesitated. Part of him doubted the boy's abilities, but something in the look, the sincerity, the calm, made him nod. "Yes, we're waiting for help, but there's no signal here." Jake, as he later learned the boy's name, smiled. "I can help." Without hesitation, he knelt, searched the trunk for the spare tire, and set to work. His small but sure hands worked with surprising skill, as if he had done this 100 times before. Meanwhile, Benjamin stood there, watching, a strange feeling rising in his heart, a deep humility. He had built his career on power and money all his life, and now he had to rely on the kindness of a strange boy, expecting nothing in return. In just a few minutes, Jake finished the job, wiped his hands on his old jeans, and stood up with a satisfied smile. "It's done." Benjamin quickly took out his wallet, pulled out a wad of money, and handed it to Jake. "Take it. You deserve it." But the boy shook his head and took a step back, his eyes filled with sincerity. "No need. Helping people is what I should do." Benjamin was stunned. The boy was unlike anyone he had ever met in his life. Not greedy, not calculating, simply an act of pure kindness. He stood there, watching Jake's figure walking down the red dirt road, his heart filled with unnamed thoughts. As he drove back to Dallas, Benjamin couldn't help but wonder, have I been so caught up in my pursuit of success that I've forgotten what's important? How long has it been since I helped someone without expecting anything in return? And how many people like Jake are out there, quietly doing small but meaningful things? Benjamin and Jake's story is more than just a flat tire. It's a reminder of kindness and humility in life. Have you ever met someone who changed the way you look at your life? That night, even though he had returned to his magnificent mansion, Benjamin could not get the image of Jake out of his mind. A sumptuous dinner was laid out on the table, a perfect steak, expensive wine, but he did not bother to eat. The room was filled with warm light, but he still felt colder and emptier than ever. Jake's confidence and carefree kindness sounded like unfamiliar music in Benjamin's mind, reminding him of the old days when he too had been a dreamer, before career and money dominated his life. How long had it been since he had met someone who did good without expecting anything in return? How long had it been since he had helped someone simply out of compassion? The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Benjamin left the house. He could not help but feel that he needed to know more about the boy, a feeling that was both curious and a deep urge from his heart. Benjamin drove along the deserted road yesterday, his old but sharp eyes following every small corner, every vast field along the way. He stopped at an old gas station, asking the attendant about a boy of about 13 or 14 years old, wearing a plaid shirt and a strong appearance. The attendant shook his head, but did not forget to point him to a small restaurant in the distance. At the roadside cafe, where the smell of baked goods and coffee wafted in the air, Benjamin walked in, feeling like he was entering another world, where time passed more slowly. He approached the counter, ordered a cup of coffee, then hesitantly asked the owner, a middle-aged woman with a gentle smile and wrinkled hands from the years. When Benjamin described him, her eyes lit up with a familiar warmth. "Oh, you mean Jake Adams. He lives in Willow Creek, about 20 miles away." Benjamin thanked her, feeling a strange joy in his heart, a feeling as if he were getting closer to something important that he could not name. The road to Willow Creek appeared before him, with vast fields stretching out under the bright sunlight. The small town was peaceful, with simple wooden houses and white picket fences surrounding small gardens full of wildflowers. On the side of the road, children ran around with crisp laughter, and adults gathered to chat on the porch. Finally, Benjamin stopped the car in front of an old but neat wooden house. The house was a bit run down, but every corner was carefully tended, with pots of wildflowers neatly arranged by the windows. He took a deep breath, got out of the car, and knocked lightly on the wooden door that had been worn by the years. The door opened, and before him stood a woman about 40 years old, with gentle eyes, but filled with the hardships of life. As Benjamin introduced himself and told her about his encounter with Jake, she smiled proudly and invited him inside. Inside the simple house, family photos hung neatly on the walls, and a few old but clean wooden items evoked a simple warmth that Benjamin had not felt in a long time. Pictures of Jake and his mother in holiday photos, and sports medals hanging in the corner of the room, all spoke of the boy's hard work and incredible determination. "Jake has always been a special child," his mother smiled. "He loves helping others, maybe because he grew up in a difficult situation. We didn't have much, but I always taught him that kindness is the most precious thing a person can give." Benjamin was silent. The words touched his heart deeply, as if recalling values he had long lost. When they stepped out onto the porch, Jake was in the backyard, diligently repairing a broken section of fence. The boy looked up, momentarily stunned by Benjamin, but then he smiled brightly. "Hello," Jake said, surprise evident on his face. "What are you doing here?" Benjamin stood there, feeling a strange warmth creeping into his heart. He wasn't sure why he had come here. Was it gratitude, curiosity, or a deep desire to do something more meaningful? His life, despite its great success, had been lacking in genuine moments like this. And perhaps the journey to find Jake was not just to find the boy, but also to find a part of himself. Benjamin looked straight into Jake's bright eyes and said slowly, "I think I need to thank you again." Jake chuckled, shaking his head. "I was just doing what I was supposed to do." The simplicity of that statement made Benjamin feel like there was something much bigger than a flat tire. It was kindness. It was sincerity without selfish motives, something he had forgotten long ago. Have you ever met someone who changed your outlook on life? Someone who may not be rich, not powerful, but taught you a priceless lesson? Perhaps, sometimes, the most precious thing is not what we own, but in simple but meaningful moments like this. Entering the simple but cozy house, Benjamin felt a completely different atmosphere compared to the cold luxury he'd been familiar with for so long. Family photos hung neatly on the wall, old but carefully preserved items. All seemed to tell a story about a simple life, but full of love. From the small window, he saw Jake working hard in the yard, repairing the old wooden fence. The boy worked with patience and dedication. Each hammer stroke was decisive, but full of responsibility. When he looked up and saw Benjamin standing there, Jake smiled brightly, not at all forced or distant. "Hello, sir. Are you back?" he asked, his eyes shining with surprise mixed with sincere joy. Benjamin smiled and walked out into the yard. He looked at the boy with a gaze full of affection, but deep inside was contemplation. Jake's natural and selfless kindness made him want to do something in return. However, when he offered to help with money, Jake just shook his head, and his mother, a strong but humble woman, also refused with a gentle smile. "Thank you, sir, but we're fine. We've never needed more than what we have." Those words were like a knife gently touching Benjamin's conscience. How long had it been since he heard someone say that? In his world, everything revolved around numbers, transactions, and benefits. No one did anything without expecting anything in return. And now, standing before him were two completely different people. People who lived with gratitude and satisfaction. But Benjamin was not one to give up easily. He decided that he would help them, but in a different way. A way they couldn't refuse. A few days after returning to Dallas, Benjamin sat in front of his computer screen, flipping through the familiar contact list. With his power and connections, he quickly contacted a team of builders, material suppliers, and architects he trusted. Within weeks, the plan was well prepared. Without telling Jake or his mother, he wanted to let his actions speak for themselves. Early that morning, as the sun was just rising from the vast fields of Willow Creek, a convoy of trucks carrying materials and workmen pulled up in front of Jake's old wooden house. The sound of engines and people talking brought the neighbors out to watch. But Jake stood there, eyes wide with amazement. Benjamin stepped out of his car, wearing his usual calm demeanor, but this time with a little more warmth than usual. He looked at the boy and said simply, "I think your house deserves a little improvement." Jake gaped as the crew got to work. The old roof was removed, new boards were put down, and the small garden began to be tended. His mother stood on the porch, too moved to speak. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, her eyes welling up. Benjamin put a hand on her shoulder, smiling gently. "I know, but it was the right thing to do. I learned more from your family, a lesson in kindness I never knew I needed." Over the next few weeks, Jake's house was transformed. The roof was reinforced, the wood floors gleamed, and the fence was freshly painted. A small garden was filled with new vegetables, and the old swing that Jake had repaired himself was replaced with a new one. Although hesitant at first, Jake couldn't resist his curiosity. He stood next to the builders, watching them work, asking questions about each step with eagerness. One of the builders, a large man with a big smile, began to teach him the basics of construction. Benjamin watched it all from a distance, a sense of pride rising in him. He felt like he was not only renovating a house, but also helping a kind-hearted boy gain new opportunities. One afternoon, as the sun colored the wheat fields in the distance, Jake came up to Benjamin, wiping his hands on his dusty jeans. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice full of sincerity. Benjamin smiled, looked at the boy for a long moment, and then said, "You've given me a much more precious gift. You reminded me that sometimes the smallest things mean the most." When everything was done, Jake's mother invited Benjamin to stay for dinner with the family. They sat around a simple table under warm yellow lights, talking about simple but real things. There were no contracts, no calculations, just people sharing what they had. Benjamin looked around, feeling his heart soften. At that moment, he realized that he was not only helping them, he was also healing. Have you ever wondered if something you do today could change someone else's life? Sometimes, a small action can make a big difference, not only for others, but also for yourself. Benjamin found his answer. How about you? When the renovation project was complete, the small wooden house now had a new look, solid, bright, and full of life. Jake and his mother stood on the porch, their eyes sparkling with joy and deep gratitude. Neighbors stopped by, bringing good wishes and delicious baked goods. The air was warm and filled with laughter, something Benjamin had not felt in a long time. One evening, as the sun was slowly setting behind the vast fields, Jake stood quietly beside Benjamin, looking at his house with indescribable pride. The boy turned to him, his voice quiet but full of determination. "I hope one day I can help others the way you helped my family." Those simple but sincere words touched Benjamin's heart. He looked at the boy, smiling warmly. For the first time in years, he did not feel lonely or lost. Jake reminded him that the true meaning of life lies not in the bank balance or flashy achievements, but in the sincere connection between people. On the way back to Dallas, Benjamin looked out the car window. The image of endless fields seemed to reflect his thoughts. He realized that despite spending his whole life pursuing wealth, he had never truly felt contented like this moment. A small act, a sharing without calculation, can change not only the lives of others, but also change his own. Why do we always chase after luxuries when true happiness lies in simple things? How long has it been since you stopped to help someone just out of kindness, without expecting anything in return? When Benjamin returned to his lavish home, it no longer felt like a peaceful refuge. The ornate walls and the gorgeous chandeliers couldn't warm his heart the way Jake and his mother's sincerity did. The next day, he decided that his kindness wouldn't stop at Willow Creek. He contacted charities and funded programs to help disadvantaged children. But more importantly, he knew that he needed to change the way he lived, spend more time on things that mattered, and learn to listen, care, and love. And just like that, Benjamin entered a new chapter of his life, a chapter that was not only about numbers and achievements, but also about empathy and sharing. Are you living your life to the fullest with the values that are truly important in your life? Or have you, like Benjamin, forgotten the profound meaning of simple things? Ask yourself, what have I done today to bring happiness to others? Life is a long journey where we are constantly searching for success, happiness, and meaning. But sometimes, the most precious things come from the simplest and most sincere moments, like the way Jake's innocent kindness changed Benjamin Carter's life. This story is a gentle reminder that in this fast-paced world, sometimes stopping to help others not only brings joy to them, but also helps us find ourselves. Benjamin spent his life chasing wealth, but it was the simple kindness of an unknown boy that taught him that true value lies not in what we own, but in what we are willing to share. Try placing your hand on your heart and ask yourself, how long has it been since you did something kind for someone without expecting anything in return? Perhaps today's small actions will become a warm flame that spreads, inspiring millions of others. If this story has touched your heart, please like and share to spread this meaningful message to more people. Because who knows, someone out there also needs a little motivation to believe in kindness in life. And don't forget to leave a score from 0 to 10. Let us know how you feel about this story. Are you curious about the next inspirational stories? Click subscribe to not miss any meaningful stories, because sometimes just a small story can change a whole life. Let's spread good values together. Leave your thoughts in the comments section. We look forward to hearing your stories.